We're coming together in shared purpose and practice as community stewards. And all of you have been called into this circle because that's who you are. And who I know you to be, many of you, is people who hold deep gratitude for what our ancestors have given, and deep responsibility, sacred responsibility to our descendants, to the land, to all our relatives. And that's who you are in community. People who hold that sacred responsibility and who hold that vision. So being a community steward in the ways that you all do that is much more than having a job at a nonprofit organization or having a role in relationship to a structure. It's fundamentally it's a spiritual commitment. It's a deep, purposeful spiritual commitment that transcends generations and extends to the communities that you've taken responsibility for. And so I think about, you may be working at the co-op incubator or at the land trust or on the farm, but the responsibility you hold is much bigger than that in the ways that you bring community together to move forward community vision. And so just grateful to all of you. Core to the work that we all do, achieving the visions that our communities have for thriving takes power in the intentional development and cultivation of power. And in a lot of the work that we've done, we've focused a lot on developing our cultural power, the ability to connect to our roots, our stories that help us define who we are and to speak for ourselves and leverage that into voice, into political voice, the ability to change the rules and to have the rules help us to value the sacred. And over the last 10 years or so, many of us have realized that we've got to also focus on ways and strategies to build community economic power in ways that allow for greater self-determination so that our communities can really move forward in an integrated way, speaking for ourselves, setting the rules, and having a foundation of resource that can all come together to support having community vision and values at the center. And really at the heart of what we're doing is figuring out how we put communities first. Yeah, how we help all institutions to kind of be responsive to and accountable to community vision. And so to build that kind of power, it's important for water to flow and for energy to flow, because energy is energy and water is water, and capital is energy that has to flow like water. And right now we've got a challenge. We've experienced the result of dams and enclosure, fear, delusion, greed, rooted in the lie of separation and supremacy that's preventing the water from flowing and preventing the energy from flowing. The energy that is the sun, that is our labor, that is our relationship to nature itself, that energy is not flowing, and it's creating a lot of harm. So in the communities that you work in, and part of our partnerships with many of you is about how we get resources to flow. And we sort of use this metaphor of the watershed to think about the flow of capital. And that right now, a lot of the resources are kind of stuck up in the clouds and the rain is not falling. And we got to figure out how to get the water down to the communities that are living at the bottom of these mountains. And we need those lakes and aquifers filled so that the visions and dreams of communities can come to life and move forward. And so in this watershed work and this ecosystem work, there's work that we do with the capital stewards, the people who currently hold the resources. There's work that you're doing in your communities to articulate vision about the resources that you need. And then there's the river work, which is about getting the water from and the capital from the people who have it to the people who need it. So we can go to the next version of this. So when we think about resources flowing, this is also about, as many of you are working on, getting beyond philanthropy, beyond the 5% of philanthropic resources to the 95% of the assets. And not just getting beyond the 5% to the 95%, but going beyond just philanthropic resources, but having your communities be able to access more capital at a much, much larger scale and different kinds of capital across the full spectrum. So the rainbow kind of represents some of the aspects of that. As we've been working on this, our partners at Impact Finance Center, have helped us to see it's not just what you see here in the rainbow, that there's at least 80 different tools, financial tools that we've got in the toolbox collectively that we can use to get that water flowing, to restore balance to the cycle. But the important thing is that we're moving into a period in which resources are flowing in a way that they haven't flowed in my lifetime towards the communities that we care about. And we're just starting to see the beginnings of that. And so what's important and what many of you are dealing with as we try to get our communities to dream and vision something big, what it would look like to create the just transition. We've been so used to just working with the crumbs, working with a few drops of water here and there. We haven't prepared for the downpour. We haven't prepared for the big snowstorm. We haven't prepared for the flood. And so a big part of what we're going to be doing in this learning journey is helping our communities prepare to absorb capital and steward capital and resources at a scale that we've never done before. So this is about getting our buckets ready. And there's essentially two core aspects of what we need to do to prepare for those resources to flow. And the first is about supporting the community to have a vision, a bold vision for what they want, and a plan to move forward that vision, and a set of solutions that need resources, right? And to have our just transition plans, our community-driven plans, our community master plans laid out in such a way that we can communicate to those who have the resources that our communities are ready to absorb capital at a very significant scale. So this is a time in which we're going to really focus on what does it take to kind of get your community plans, your just transition plans to a place where your community is ready to absorb capital. And then the second thing that's essential is having the community capital infrastructure, the community economic infrastructure, where you can steward the capital in the land. So getting your land trust in place, getting your community loan fund in place, getting your co-op incubator in place, having the structures that you need in place so that you can manage home, you can steward the economic relationships that need to be stewarded. So we're going to focus a lot on the plan, we're going to focus a lot on the infrastructure, and do a lot of sharing about where different communities are at in building out that infrastructure. And really, when you look at the ecosystem, right, the center of everything is the community's plan. We want everything accountable to a community plan. And once the community has a plan, then that helps us to hold capital accountable to the community's plan, so that when resources flow into a community, whether it's philanthropic resources or investment resources or public resources, they're flowing into community priorities. And so there's a set of work we're going to be doing that's about the information that has to be developed in place so that you have a capital plan that mirrors the community's plan. And this is just sort of another illustration that fundamentally, oftentimes, the money is dictating, the term sheets and the foundation guidelines and the governmental guidelines dictate to communities what they can do and how they can do it. And what we want to do is we want to flip and reverse that relationship so that the communities are setting the terms of capital, and they're taking in the kind of capital that they need when they need it, in the form that they need it. And that's how we're reorganizing and restructuring the relationship of the capital flows. There are 4 different sort of domains that we think about in terms of what is core economic infrastructure. And at the center, we've got the community, the stewards, those of you who bring the community together to do that visioning, to do that planning, to set those priorities, and to build the power to move things forward. And in relationship to that, we've got incubators. And incubators are the things in our communities that help build our community's economic power capacity. And as Malcolm told us, repair starts with our relationship to the land itself, with our relationship to the soil itself. And so many of you are turning to land trusts as a tool and a structure through which we come back into right relationship with the land, in partnership with Indigenous peoples. And then we need cultural and organizing spaces. We need our organizing groups and our cultural centers to really be the place where we build out that cultural and political power that's really the driver for the economic power. And then lastly, we need community-controlled capital structures, places where the community can steward itself, its shared and collective wealth, through community loan funds and other structures that allow the community to invest directly in its own priorities. What we've been saying to our friends in philanthropy is that this is a time in which hundreds of millions of dollars need to flow out of philanthropy into communities so that communities can access billions of dollars in very low interest long-term debt so that we can have the capacity to absorb trillions in public resources. And if for those of you who are paying attention to what's happening with past stimulus and the current stimulus, there are significant resources that are getting ready to flow into our communities. And as we know from 2008 and from many other examples, even when those resources are earmarked for our communities, we often can't access them. The resources just fly over because the investment hasn't been made in our capacity to reach up, grab those resources, and bring them down. So the real thing we're going to be preparing for, what our community plans are preparing for, is helping us put in place what is needed to access resources at a scale that is really, really unheard of and unimagined. This learning journey is about making sure we're ready to absorb those resources.